Well, Zach, I had a perfect way to kick us off this week. And this is a story about my sister. I was texting with her last week and I was trying to get her excited about using Copilot because she's now using Microsoft projects in her job. And she made fun of me a little bit, which was it kind of hurt. It was a pretty savage burn. She told me the dudes your age love AI. That's a pretty savage burn, right?
This is going to be the geekiest episode yet, and we're already 20 seconds in. So Gabe, I want to follow up on that. Do you and your family openly talk about Copilot, or is that a common thing? Because I don't think I've ever talked to my family about Copilot, maybe AI, but Copilot, that one's new.
It was a very specific conversation. So my sister works in marketing as well, and so her and I, half of our text thread is all of our family insanity, and then the other half of our text thread is talking about nerdy marketing stuff. And she just recently got a new job, and the new job is using Microsoft products as well as and moving away from Google and Apple products that she's always used in the past. So she was making fun of herself a little bit and feeling old that she was having trouble, figuring out these Microsoft things. And I was like, but wait, you can use Copilot. It's going to be amazing. And then she hit me with the savage, dudes your age. And it hurt a little bit. I'm not going to lie, but I did laugh. It was funny.
I don't know if she listens to this podcast, but I'll be nice just in case. So I'll be careful what I say next. But I will say, Gabe, any chance you have to move away from Apple's ecosystem as far as Pages, and I forget what their Excel version is, but it's total trash. So I'm happy to hear that might be right. I always confuse that with Google Sheets, but
I do too.
If you've ever used it, it's total trash, and it genuinely surprises me that Apple created that. Like, Gabe, if you have a minute this week, open up Sheets. I guess do you have a Mac?
I do. I have a MacBook just for kind of personal stuff. So I will open up Sheets and see, and it will probably make me sad. It's the reason I still have a PC for work is because even Excel in Mac is so different than Excel on PC. And I have, as you know, I'm a complete lunatic about my keyboard shortcuts, and I refuse to relearn all of the keyboard shortcuts on a Mac. Otherwise, I probably would have switched to that a while ago.
Yeah, and on that note, and then we can jump into really talking about AI. I saw a TikTok this week that you'd appreciate. I didn't even send it to you, which I'm kind of sad I didn't. But it was a keyboard shortcut. It was a quiz. It was like, which keyboard shortcut creates a pivot table in Excel? And you could pick your options. Of course, I got it right, but all
DP, right? All DPP.
You're right on. You're right on. That's the kind of content.
Oh man, it's concerning all of the things that I have forgotten in my life, but I can remember that without even really thinking about it that hard.
This is so geeky, and again, 3 minutes into this. But on the fun side, if Excel wasn't the fun side for you, AI. Gabe, we've talked about AI in a few episodes, and now just kind of sprinkling that in. Over the last 12 months, there's been a huge focus on AI. You know my stance on AI. I really like AI. However, I refuse to become like the AI bro who, can only live life with AI and needs all of these pointless AI apps. You know that's not me, but what is interesting is the practical use cases of AI, and that's really what we want to focus on today.
Yeah, I think it's a great intro, Zach. And there's, as you said, obviously this isn't a new topic. We've talked about this a little bit on the podcast. I think there's tons of content out there around how to use AI for your job, but where I feel like a lot of it falls short is actually that practical piece. It's a lot of esoteric discussions about the power of AI and how it's going to steal our jobs and how it's going to be impactful for different businesses. And I think those are all important discussions. But what we wanted to do today was actually talk through some really specific use cases of how to leverage some of these AI tools in your job so that you can hopefully make yourself more efficient. And I saw a tweet, a sort of peripherally around this, and I thought it was really relevant for the topic today. So I'm just going to read this really quick. It said, AI will replace the doing in a ton of industries. The highest paid people in any industry don't get paid to do. They get paid to think. And then others do the doing. So if you don't want to be replaced by AI, then you need to stop doing and start thinking. I thought that was a great way to kind of frame up the conversation today and also start to think about where AI can be beneficial and help you do the doing. Is a kind of a weird way to say it, but I kind of like that. And, help folks actually leverage some of these tools to do that.
I love it. And I'm realizing now I probably offended 10% of our listeners with my AI bro comment. So I will not apologize, but I love that quote, Gabe. And it kind of makes me think of how I use AI. And Gabe, between you and I think we both use AI very differently. And we've talked, like, even on our last podcast of, the rise of Gen Z and how different generations do different things and things along that nature. But I think with AI, we see that as well, to your sister's comment even. And I think it's a great place to start today, just going through some of the definitions of AI and what types of AI we're talking about.
Yeah, I love kicking us off here because, again, this is an area where I feel like people assume that folks know some of this information, and you kind of don't want to be the dumb person who asks, well, what does this stuff exactly mean? So we thought it would be good just to start at a high level with some quick definitions of what we're talking about as we go through the rest of the podcast. So I'll start here, Zach, with natural language processing, or NLP. And this really is just the ability for a computer to understand and generate human language. And it's really probably the most common AI use case that we see. Think ChatGPT and other chatbots that you're interacting with. That's a natural language processor. It's something where you're putting natural language in like you would talk to a person, and natural language is coming out the other side as well in a generative, that's a hard word to say, and I know I'm gonna have to say it a lot today, so I'm gonna have to work on that one, but in a generative way. So I just wanted to use that as kind of a jumping off point for a lot of this, because it's a really important baseline for this topic. And I think really the reason that you've seen this massive increase in adoption is because in this case you are actually able to talk to a computer in a natural way versus having to code.
I love it. And one of the things you mentioned, I just had a conversation with a colleague, and I'll name drop because she was on this podcast a year ago, but Kat, we were just talking last week about how with AI, it's becoming, the data you input, the questions you ask is really where a lot of the power from AI is going to come from. And I saw a review on YouTube even about a new AI device, which I won't name drop because it didn't get the best reviews, but it was all about, what do people input into the device to get the answer? And Gabe, I think that sums up exactly how a lot of people are using AI today. And, looking ahead, how can you improve the prompts you use to get better results from the NLP?
That's probably the biggest struggle for people is, what is it that I want to ask in order to get better information out of it? And the prompting piece is huge. It's providing that context, providing as much context as you possibly can to an AI tool so that you do get better information out of it. And this is true of the next topic as well, Zach, the generative AI piece. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, and I think alongside ChatGPT is a common name, Google's Gemini now, those are some of the big names, the common ones. But with generative AI, and I'm going to have to focus on saying that today as well, this is, I think, another area people are very familiar with, right? Generating text, generating images, name dropping Kat again. She was sharing with me one last week where people had generated actual videos. And this is something I've seen on YouTube even, where you have like a car driving down a beach and you've got the waves, the clouds, the nice scenery. And then they explain that it was totally built by AI. And it's kind of, to a point now where you actually have to like really look at it and see if you can recognize the AI. Whereas with the image generation, I've worked a lot with the Adobe side. Canva a little bit has this as well. You can kind of tell when AI has generated things. You may have, I think of like...
People have like 7 fingers on one hand.
Exactly. There's just odd things that AI just doesn't get right. With the generative AI in Adobe Illustrator, you can build out icons, and it's not terrible. Like, I'll get in and I'll say, like, design me a Wi-Fi icon. And we all know what we're thinking, like on your iPhone, the little lines and, with the signal strength. And it seems like it still struggles with that a little bit. But generating this content from AI, whether it's photo, video, whatever that media may be from existing data that's been training these models, it's gotten pretty good. One of the ones we even talked about on the team was generating like professional headshots and like how close some of these apps can get to providing a realistic image. Of course, it's based off a dozen photos you upload and send to who knows where. I don't really want to try that too much, but it's very interesting to see how this content is being generated. Meta has a tool, Gabe, that we've talked about as well that generates images, and it's a lot of fun to play with. And when you find that practical use case, I think there's a lot of time savings, a lot of efficiencies to be gained in whether you're creating icons in Adobe, landscapes, patterns, whatever that may be. The graphic designer in me is kind of stuck on this Adobe use case, but it's becoming a very powerful tool. Again, based on the prompt or that input you give the AI system.
Well, and that leads us nicely into the next one, Zach, which is this idea of multimodal. And this is one that I heard folks talking about for a while. And this is one where I totally didn't want to be the dumb guy who asked the question of like, what exactly does that mean? So I had to go off and do a little bit of research on my own. But what that's talking about is taking information from multiple modes. And what that means is simply it could be written text. It could be an image, as Zach, you were just talking about. Hey, here's 12 images of myself. Go create a professional headshot off of these 12 images. That's multimodal. Or even a video. I've seen stuff where folks are pointing their camera at a bike, for an example, because they're trying to figure out how to fix it. And the AI will actually talk you through the process based on what it sees is the problem on the bike that you're trying to fix. The other one, you mentioned Meta just a moment ago, and we talked about this, I think, on the last one a little bit also, or maybe it was 2 times ago, where we were talking about their AI of training people. So you put the glasses on, and then you're cooking a recipe, and somebody is coaching you through actually how to do that recipe. That's an idea of multimodal, where that video is coming in, and you have an AI that's interacting with you based on all of the information that in that case it can see from your kitchen where you're making something, which is kind of wild to think about.
That's like one of my favorite use cases. Like I don't see myself wearing my Meta goggles or whatever, like in my kitchen cooking spaghetti of all things. But was this the same one, Gabe, where it was like teaching you how to play tennis? I feel like there was a tennis example. I feel like stuff like that is very useful, whether you agree or you kind of cringe at the thought of technology being so integrated into life. But I totally see the use case there. This to me does not seem like, one of those, going back to my AI bros comment, one of those random apps on your phone that you have just to have. I feel like there's actual use case still being developed. I feel like we're still very early into this
we're
AI
very
ecosystem.
Much in the nascent stage of this stuff,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, so to see what we're seeing already, I'm mostly impressed.
Agreed. I think that's what's so wild about it, is that it's happening so quickly, and things like the Meta solution where it's teaching you how to do something. I agree with you. That's a really good use case. And if people can learn from this, is people learn in different ways. And that's actually something we're going to talk about here in a moment, Zach, around practical uses of AI. If people learn in different ways, some are going to learn better from a coach, some are going to learn better from just watching a video, some are going to learn better from reading. If you can provide people that output in multiple ways so that they can learn the way that is best for them, I should say, that's hugely beneficial. And AI can create that content in a very, very efficient way.
I love it. I'm thinking back to like my college classes and my high school classes, thinking of like, where could we have inserted AI? And I don't know if I could have put it like in my accounting classes or my marketing classes, but the use cases there, we had tech classes as well. I feel like it would have been a great introduction into AI. But one of the questions I have for you, Gabe, based on that, is what's your number one use case of AI today personally? How are you personally using AI?
Definitely in ideation around, well, I guess it's sort of twofold. It's ideation around specific topics, generally around marketing. So, hey, I want to make up a campaign, what would be some good copy for this? But I would say my probably even more popular use case than that is reviewing and analyzing information in a very succinct way. So one of the things that I do regularly for kind of regular job is I look through and read through transcripts of earnings calls, financial calls for some of the large telecommunications companies.
Oh, here we go again, Gabe. This is getting very nerdy.
Very nerdy. We're circling back up to the
I feel
nerd
bad.
part of the
I feel bad for
conversation.
calling you out because we both knew I do the same thing. But
Well, you texted me yesterday a really cool tool, and you can talk if you want to talk about this in a sec. You can also, but there's a really cool tool that'll actually do some of this for you, which I thought was super interesting. But the way I've been using it is I will take the transcript of an earnings call and I will push that into Copilot, and then I will start asking questions of Copilot based on that transcript. And a transcript may be, it's going to be hundreds, if not thousands of words. It's probably an hour-long conversation with analysts and leaders of these companies that are going back and forth around specific topics of the business. It's a lot to read through, and it takes a lot of time. Whereas now what I can do is just ask specific questions of it to say, what happened with ARPU this quarter? And it will spit out the answer for me. Or why are the reasons that this particular metric changed, went up or down? And it will spit out those answers for me. So I found that to be incredibly useful and a huge time saver, because rather than having to spend an hour reading through an entire earnings transcript or listening to a call, I can throw that transcript into Copilot, ask a bunch of questions, and within maybe 5-10 minutes, get a really good understanding of what happened with that particular company.
time savings is going to be like the topic with AI today. I have a feeling. The financial tool you mentioned, Gabe, I wish I remembered the name. I would totally name drop it, but the name escapes me. But it was doing, it's, we'll call it Gabe GPT, basically what you just said, analyzing, hundreds of pages, financial documents, anything that's released with a company. You can go in and you can put in like the company stocks. If you want to look at Apple, Google, Netflix, you can just punch that in, and then you can start asking questions and get those results. It makes doing these analyses very, very efficient. You don't have to your point, Gabe. What was that?
FinTool is the name of
FinTool.
and it's ChatGPT plus the Edgar database. So the Edgar database is where all public companies have to file all of their public statements. So every quarter, every year, they have to, basically anytime anything changes, they have to go out and file these public public statements, and they all go into Edgar. And if you think the earnings transcripts are long, those financial statements are even longer and really brutal to read through. Even somebody who's interested in this stuff finds them brutal to read through. So I thought that was an amazing tool, Zach, to summarize that information. And with that, because there's trends in there and things like that, year over year information, you could really start to ask some interesting questions to understand what's going on with a business in a very succinct way.
The interesting thing too, Gabe, is not just the historical data, but the screenshot I sent you last night was like, what's the revenue projection for 2025 and going on? And it is interesting that the AI is capturing that information and building out that model for you to look at. And again, I think that's a cool use case.
For sure.
Another one, Gabe, Google reviews. And when I think of Google reviews, the way I have done this is I'm a big fan of Google's Gemini AI. I think I mentioned that earlier. It's great. I think ChatGPT is great as well, but with Google you have access to a lot more of that online information right at your fingertips. And one of the things it can do is it can create spreadsheets. So you can say like, hey, create a spreadsheet of all of the Google reviews in this town for this company from these date ranges. Or if you want to really get into the prompts, you can say with a rating of 5 stars and up. Or you can dissect the data however you want based on your prompt, and then it outputs a table or it outputs a Google sheet which you can throw into Excel. We already went down that path, and it allows you to quickly analyze this data. But if you think about it, I think about like when I'm analyzing competitors and doing this analysis where I'm looking at Google reviews, and I just need to quickly copy and paste information. It's doing all of this in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that use case. I think that's a really interesting one, especially to summarize that information. If you're doing competitive analysis, something like that, being able to quickly summarize that. Where it goes even further too, and this is where we get into that NLP, the natural language processing bit of this. If you wanted to copy and paste all of the Google reviews for a particular business into Copilot Chat or into ChatGPT, whatever, just something where you can start to ask questions about the information that's in there, copy and paste all those Google reviews, and then start asking questions about the reviews. What are the positive words that are coming out? What are the negative words that are coming out? How are people talking about your service? And that can be useful in many different ways to at least get a high level understanding of what's good about your business and what's bad about your business. But even more important, I was having this conversation with a coworker earlier today. It's so easy to get caught up in using buzzwords just in marketing in general, and just generally when you're talking about business, the synergies that we're gonna gain from this acquisition, or blah blah. It's just like people use these fancy words because they want to sound smart. In reality, our customers just want to understand what the heck it is that we're talking about. So if we can use their language in our marketing, that's a huge win. And if you go through your Google reviews, you get a pretty darn good understanding of how your customers are talking about your business and the words that they're using to talk about that business. So you can forklift potentially a lot of those words that they're using into your marketing copy and really make it resonate with your existing customers or prospects or whoever. But again, you're using their language and not fancy business language that nobody knows what the heck means.
That's a great example, Gabe. Last year we were on this big presentation where we were talking about how to market fiber networks and what customers understand, and it goes back to that same topic of nobody knows what, I shouldn't say nobody, not many subscribers know what fiber is or why fiber is better, or the website examples we had of this single glass strand, like what does that mean to people? Whereas when we're using
Nothing.
AI to
It means
scrape the
nothing
data to understand what's meaningful to them, it's a great way to build your marketing message. You don't have to dumb it down, but just I think speaking reasonably is enough to help those messages. Which leads us into another idea here, Gabe, blog creation. And now this is something you were interested in. We talked about it a little bit last week. One of the use cases I've done here specific to Gemini is tossing in a YouTube video link and asking for a summary of this video. We talked about making a blog post from a video, and you could have hours-long videos, and Gemini will pull the video data, summarize that, and provide that output. Another use case I've done, and this is just me, cooking my spaghetti, but you can take cooking videos, or again, any video, and I'll tell Gemini to summarize this, list the ingredients, list the steps, and suddenly from this 20-minute Sam the Cooking Guy YouTube video, I've got a recipe. I don't need to watch the video. I can, cook along just by reading out the recipe on my phone. So things like that. I mean, go back to saving time. That's a 20-minute video, and now I have it in 10 seconds where I can read through each step, build a shopping list if I need that. But it just saves me time from having to watch that whole video.
It's a great use case. And to go back to the specific example we were talking about, Zach, that I'd asked you about last week, my idea was, could we take the transcripts of our podcast and use it to create a summary blog post that basically just kind of walks through a high level and hits the highlights of the podcast? And we were going back and forth around what the easiest way was to do this. If we downloaded a transcript, then we could fairly easily do that, I think, and using something like Copilot, like we've been talking about previously, or ChatGPT. But we quickly realized that we couldn't get transcripts unless we paid a much more money. So your idea, which I thought was brilliant, was just go have Gemini summarize it from the YouTube video. So we take these podcasts, we upload them to YouTube. So there's a video component of this also. And what you can do is exactly what Zach said. You just go into Gemini, you post in the YouTube link, and it will summary. Then you can start asking questions of it. Create a summary of this podcast. And Zach, it was pretty darn good. The summary that came out of that was, I was pretty surprised by in a pleasant way. I mean, yes, we would have had to adjust it a little bit to create an actual blog post off of it, but I would say it was probably 80% of the way there. What would you say?
Oh yeah, we totally could have. I feel like we could have gone live with that, and not many people, if anyone, would have known. The cool thing about it was, like you said, we're on a budget, so what better way to summarize and build a blog post than with Gemini AI? And I think ChatGPT, I should mention that they do have some online connection, but I think that's like a paid subscription now. So we're using Gemini just because it's free and online. But part of that, Gabe, was it recognized from the video, like, who was talking to who. And I thought that was very interesting because in our podcast episodes, you may notice this today, we never introduced each other. I never said, oh, hey, here's Gabe. It's just that natural, like, Zach, what do you think? Gabe, what do you think? Things like that. And Gemini was able to pick up on that and identify who was talking at different parts in this video.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. And like I said, summarized it in a really good way. And to go back to something we were talking about before of people learn in different ways. Some people may learn by listening to this podcast. That's great. Some people may learn by watching the YouTube. That's awesome too. Some people just may want to read a quick summary of what we talked about. Okay, well, if we're trying to create as much content as possible, why would we not want to be efficient with that content creation and have the computer just do it for us rather than going off and writing a whole blog post based off of this? If again, it can get 80% of the way there, then you or I finish that last 20% and we're done, right? And it's a huge time efficiency gain for us, and hopefully a win for people because they can, again, learn in a way that is relevant for them and the way that they want to learn. That to me is, I think that the most exciting part about all this is how you're able to create all of those different types of content off of potentially a single piece of content so that people can learn how they want to learn.
Which is a great introduction to, I think, one of our last items here, but how to use, AI in marketing, how to analyze your copy, provide guidance. There's a tool online, and I've used it to test subject lines in the past for emails. And what I started doing is using AI to test those subject lines. And it goes back to one of your initial definitions too, Gabe, but instead of me testing potential subject lines from the email, I can actually just take my email and ask what would be a good subject line, and could you include these things? Include an emoji, include a call to action, whatever I tell AI to do based on my email. And it's done a pretty good job at creating subject lines.
Yeah, I think it's a great use case, and one where you can kind of play with it. You can be, a kind of that iterative where you're going back and forth with the AI to create those subject lines or email copy or whatever. And what's nice about it too is, to go back to a comment you made earlier, Zach, the prompting piece of this is so important, and being specific about where this marketing is actually going to end up. Is it an email subject line, or is it a social post, or is it a social ad? And AI having that additional context of where is this ultimately going to end up, because then it can adjust based on what's going to perform the best. And I know a piece that you're very passionate about too here is the visual content that can be created. You talked about Adobe a little bit earlier, but can you give us some more specific examples of how you've been able to use Adobe to create, specific imagery or other tools? And you talked about Canva also in the past, but using that natural language to create something that's visually appealing to people and makes it so you don't have to, reinvent the wheel, that it's the computers and the AI is doing the hard work for you.
Yeah, and Gabe, I think we might have talked about this on a previous episode as well. But at one point when I was just getting started with Adobe's AI, one of the things I was looking at was outdoor Wi-Fi. How can I create outdoor Wi-Fi content with AI? So I opened up Illustrator and I had it generate different outdoor Wi-Fi graphics and backgrounds. And for the most part, I did pretty well. It would do, I'm trying to think of the prompt I used. I think I said something about I'm on my patio, pool, outdoor Wi-Fi, highlight this. And it would show, a Wi-Fi router and a nice landscape background. And if I was going to draw that or manually recreate that in Illustrator, that would have taken hours. And there was a few things, sometimes the Wi-Fi router was just, misshapes or just things like that. But that's an easy fix.
Where it had 7 fingers again, right?
Exactly.
All the weird antennas sticking out all over the place.
Things like that. So, it's still a great tool, especially when you're creating vectors. So for my one graphic designer listening to this podcast, it's great for creating those quick vectors and having that. I'm a big fan of the Noun Project, which is an icon library. You can go and
that's a really cool one.
Grab all kinds of icons. You name it, they have it. Fantastic site. But with AI now and Adobe, I mentioned creating that Wi-Fi icon in the beginning of the podcast. You input that prompt and it generates that icon. You can resize it. You can customize. You have that vector, so you're ready to go. The cool thing that I haven't seen this on Adobe yet, it might exist, but I haven't played with it, is something I've seen in Canva. And I should say, I don't dislike Canva, but there's things about Canva I do
I know
dislike.
you have a love-hate relationship with Canva, Zach. It's okay.
Yeah. And it comes down to the thing I like about the AI in Canva, and I helped a colleague here do just this, where she had created a graphic but needed it sized differently. And Canva has an AI component now that will resize that content to whichever dimensions you want. And Gabe, if you're thinking about this like I am, I think of Facebook and I think of those ad placements. We talked about how you should size your content appropriately for every placement. Well, now you could just come in and tell Canva, like, hey, I need 5 graphics, each this size, and Canva will move things around, resize, and do all of that heavy lifting for you. And I think that's fantastic. My big complaint with Canva is all the content looks the same. It all looks the same. So if you're using it as your primary design tool, just make sure your brand is evident. It's going to have like those little polka dots in the background, or like we've all seen like the Canva designs. It's a fantastic tool. I definitely think it's a great introduction into the Adobe suite if you really want to go all out. That's where I started back in high school with Canva, or even I think it was Microsoft Publisher actually. I don't know if you've ever used that one, Gabe, but that's
old
that's a
school,
horrific platform there. But
that was bad.
But the AI in Canva for resizing content and things like that, it's a huge time saver that when you apply it to this Facebook use case, it's a win-win.
Well, there's our time saver thing again, Zach. I feel like this is our common theme, kind of this common thread throughout is, yes, you're absolutely right. We've talked about this before. If you're gonna run meta ads and you're gonna put them across all these different placements, for God's sakes, make sure that they are sized for those placements. And that can take a lot of time. And if you're the small marketing team, or maybe only one person working at a company or whatever, that does take a lot of time. So being able to use something like Canva to efficiently go through and create all those different pieces of content resized for resized is huge. That's a huge time saver for sure. So I love that use case. I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, these have all been some great examples, and it's great to learn some of these definitions as well. I'm really excited. I think this year we will start to see AI integrated more closely into things we use every day. I'm thinking
so glad you said this.
I'm thinking like Siri. Like it's only a matter of time before Apple brings AI into Siri. If you have an Android phone, you've probably got the Google app. I've got the Google app on my iPhone. That's how I use Gemini. It's a fantastic tool. But I think we're going to start seeing this very much integrated into different platforms. And I think last year I got some new kitchen appliances. They all have Wi-Fi. And now I'm thinking like, where could the AI be of use in my kitchen? And it may sound like a cringy comment today, like, oh, they're adding tech to everything, but I legitimately do think that there will be additional use cases that impact your everyday life. And while we don't all need to become these AI bros, I think we will see, some significant improvements in AI, and then with that, integrations into everyday life.
I think it's a great point, and everyday life as well as everyday work life. And I want to top up one thing you said there around integrating into tools that we're already using. This is one of the things that I've been so impressed with around Copilot and the Microsoft application specifically. So Zach and I both work for the same company, and they have invested in Copilot for us. And what's been really interesting over the last few months since we've been using it is the data, because our data is being used to generate answers now. And because there's enough data that's being used over a few month period of time, that the AI is getting really, really smart about our product names, our strategy, internal stuff that we don't necessarily share broadly, but it has access to this through PowerPoint presentations, through Word docs, through Excel files, through other things, SharePoint, all of that's integrated into the Microsoft platform. And so now when I go ask a question of Copilot, it's very context specific for the job that I do even on a daily basis. It knows what job I do. It knows what people I work with. And so it provides really context specific stuff. And it's kind of freaky, but really cool in a time-saving way where, because it's all integrated into that single platform, it's really been a massive time saver. And I've been continue to be very, very impressed with the quality of responses that I get.
It's fantastic. And I threw shade at Apple for their Excel Sheets program at the beginning of this podcast. So just to show I'm not biased, I'll throw shade at Microsoft now. But as much as I hate Microsoft Teams, what a terrible app. The AI within Teams is impressive. Being able to summarize chats, or being able to, I think Zoom has this as well, summarize a video call, take notes, list the action items. Yeah, I mean, the prompts are endless, right? You can almost ask anything you want and you'll get an answer. So on a productivity side, I don't have the bandwidth to check 6 dozen chats every day. But then when Copilot comes in, summarizes and identifies some of those high level things to pay attention to, whether it's a chat, an email, or a document that needs attention, things like that. I think the productivity features are amazing, and it's become my personal assistant is kind of how you think of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a great way to say it.
Gabe, this was a great conversation. I'm glad we finally got to talk about some of the real AI. We've been talking a lot about AI these past few episodes, so I'm glad we were able to talk about what's new in AI, how we're using AI, and some of the ways people should be using AI today.
Yeah, I hope folks come away from this with just some of those, again, practical use cases. I think that's one of the things that Zach and I really want to do with this podcast in general, is just be specific about how this can be beneficial. So, if you're in any business, you're going to get Google reviews. Go copy and paste those Google reviews into a doc and start asking questions and find out. That should be maybe step number one, right? I love the idea, Zach, of summarizing Google reviews as well for some of your competitors. I think that's a great use case using Gemini. There's just a couple of these things, and hopefully this was, gave folks a couple of things to think about in ways that they could practically use AI in their day-to-day activities in business. I'm
just waiting for the day where the AI can do my taxes. I feel like that's like the ultimate solution there. Just ask AI to do your 2025 taxes and be done with it. Doesn't that sound amazing? That does sound amazing. Although, to be fair, well, it is tax day. Look at that. We're recording this on tax day. But I kind of have the best situation because my wife is a CPA, and I just hand her all of my tax documents, and she just hands it back to me, and they're all completed. So it's pretty great. The accountant in me used to love tax season, but the past year I think I cried at least once or twice. But Gabe, I would love to use your tax accountant sometime too, if I can get the friends and family discount. Well, being that I hope she doesn't charge me. I haven't looked to see if there's like a bill waiting for me when I go back inside. So that may be waiting for me. We'll see. All right. Well, good luck to you, Gabe. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We'll be back with another exciting episode next week. Don't forget to give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. And again, if you'd like to go to YouTube and maybe use Gemini to summarize our latest podcast, try that out as well. But we'll be back again next week with a new episode.